Duncan Sutherland. The crofter's son from Sutherlandshire, who became one of North Otago's greatest wool barons. Duncan Sutherland's grandfather, Donald, was a Highland soldier who returned home to Sutherlandshire in 1814 after years abroad in the service of the British Crown, a broken man. Blind in one eye, half blind in the other, and with dozens of other injuries, he might have expected some sort of support from his clan leader, Elizabeth Gordon, the future Duchess of Sutherlandshire, at whose behest he had enlisted years before. Instead, he and dozens of other wounded veterans of the Napoleonic Wars came home to their Highland base to face a future of penury and dispossession. From 1819, a series of evictions forced men like Donald Sutherland off their family farms with their homes burnt behind them as they left by her agents. They were moved instead to new crofts, tiny plots of land in less fertile parts of the Sutherland estate. Hundreds of clan members who had farmed their ancestral territory for generations were now replaced by sheep farmers from the south, single tenants who could pay vastly greater rentals for the same acreage. Many Sutherland tenants opted to emigrate to North America rather than accept a croft. Others moved over the county border to Caithness in search of new farm tenancies. Duncan's family, however, endured the transition to crofting, and his father Judy became a shoemaker here at East Clyne, a crofting settlement on the coast just a few kilometres from the Duchess's magnificent castle at Dunrobin. Duncan Sutherland was born here in 1834, the youngest of 3 children. His older sister Betsy subsequently married one of the southern shepherds brought into the area to work the new sheep runs, and emigrated to Victoria with him in 1856. Duncan then followed them to Australia and learnt sheep station management from his brother-in-law at Warrambeen near Geelong. These skills brought him to the attention of Australian station owners with interests in Otago, and in 1868 they sent him across the Tasman to manage their 180,000 acre station here at Omarama on a 3-year contract. Duncan did so well at Omarama that his employers quickly doubled his salary to entice him to stay. He was also tasked with managing, in addition, the neighbouring runs of Morven Hills and Ardgowan, a further 450,000 acres, then sharing 145,000 sheep. This made him a very important figure in North Otago, and when the Waitaki County Council was established in 1876, he was elected one of its members. He would serve for 35 years, and 30 of them as its chairman. Likewise, when Waitaki Boys High School was established in 1878, Duncan was appointed one of its governors, a role that he filled for 50 years. In 1869, he'd married Euphemia Hodgkinson, who was the widow of a fellow station manager. Their eldest son was one of the very first boarders here at the school. Altogether, they would have 5 sons and 1 daughter. Duncan played many other leadership roles in the North Otago community, including fostering athletics through the Oamaru Caledonian Society as its president. He proudly wore his Highland garb in that capacity, the entire costume now part of the Toitu collection. Duncan and Betsy remained close. He imported stud rams from Warrambeen, now his sister's property after the death of her husband, travelling to Victoria to choose them himself. Omarama fleeces became internationally renowned, winning prizes in London and Australia and earning a top reputation with wool buyers. By the 1890s, Betsy had become immensely rich and was known as the Wool Queen of Victoria. Duncan was likewise now a wealthy man, and together they held sway over vast territories in Australia and New Zealand that dwarfed the entire extent of the Sutherland estate back here in Scotland. When they returned to East Clyne for a visit in triumph in 1898, no doubt checking out this headstone that they'd paid to be erected over their parents' grave, their colonial success must have seemed bittersweet. There was another irony to Duncan Sutherland's career that is worth noting. The Omarama station belonged to a vast area of land that Māori claimed had not been included in the land sales of the 1840s and 1850s. Their dispute over what they called the hole in the middle had festered for years. In 1877, the Kaitahu prophet Te Maiharoa took direct action, leading a group of his people up the Waitaki Valley to occupy this disputed zone. They established a new settlement that they called Te Ao Marama, erected dwellings, built a church/school and began to cultivate the land. Now, local landowners were very alarmed by this and put pressure on the government to evict the protesters. In August 1879, a detachment of the Otago Armed Constabulary set off from Oamaru to do so. The armed constabulary were joined by Duncan Sutherland with 10 of his station shepherds at Omarama. After a tense encounter, Te Maiharoa agreed to lead his people back to the coast. Their houses were burnt behind them in scenes reminiscent of what Duncan's grandfather had experienced back in Scotland 60 years earlier. Duncan Sutherland retired to Oamaru in about 1918 to a home in Hull Street that he called Killernan, the exact same name that his sister Betsy gave to her mansion in Australia. Now, this probably points to their family's ancestral village here in the Strath of Kildonan, just inland from Helmsdale, which was cleared between 1813 and 1819. He died at Killernan in Oamaru in 1933, aged 94, and he left behind a reputation as one of the grand old men of North Otago's pioneering era. He also left a substantial estate and was buried here in this family plot in Dunedin Southern Cemetery. It seems a long way from a croft in East Clyde.